Hi, my name is Jeff Spencer. I'm a senior project seller with Microsoft. Today I'm going to give you an overview of Project Online. We're going to cover portfolio management, resource management, and project collaboration. The key strategic advantage of Microsoft is the Microsoft Cloud. In addition to Project and Project Online, we're fully integrated with the Office 365 platform. That brings in the Office Graph, Azure, as well as Power BI to look at all of the components that we have to offer. As we look at each of the individual components, today we're going to focus on Project Online and Power BI for reporting. The Microsoft PPM solution is broken into four major components: portfolio management, project management, resource management, and project collaboration. Within portfolio management, we'll talk about demand management, portfolio selection and reporting. Within project management, we'll talk about both waterfall and agile planning, tracking risks and issues within projects, and getting out key reports. Within resource management, we'll talk about capacity planning with a singleized resource pool, time sheeting, and resource engagements. And for project collaboration, how do we share information across our entire team and collaborate with one another? Now let's drill into the actual demo. This is the Project Online homepage, and we're going to start by drilling into the Project Center. As I drill into the Project Center, the system knows who I am, which projects I should see, the views of the projects I should see, and the amount of detail. I'm now looking at all of my projects organized by portfolio. So I can see key graphical indicators based on the overall health, schedule, cost, risks, issues, and work. I can see financial data, both cost and cost variance, rolled up to the portfolio level. At any point in time, I can pivot this data and look at it by another view as well. So I've got additional views as well as additional grouping. So let's change our grouping from portfolio to category. And now I can see all of my financials re-rolled up by the key categories that my projects are aligned to. Let's go back to my portfolio view and let's drill in and get some more information about these projects. Let's drill into this HIPAA project. I can see that I have risks and issues that are associated with it. Let's drill in and see what we can gain from drilling into more information. As I drill into the project, I'm presented with project detail pages as well as a project schedule. So here we have the project schedule. Again, the system knows who you are and what level of detail you should see. So I'm seeing a view of all the activities in the schedule with my critical and non-critical path tasks shown. If I shouldn't see information related to cost data, I simply wouldn't have access to views with cost information on it. Now, in addition to seeing the schedule and being able to edit it right here in the browser or in Project Pro, I can see my project detail pages as well. And the project detail pages show us additional attributes about our projects. So for example, if I'm going to want to be able to organize this project by the category that it belongs to or the portfolio that it belongs to, you have complete control to configure this system to have any tailored fields that you want to organize your data by. Now, in addition, we have the project site, and the project site is key. This is where most of the collaboration actually occurs. This is where we store the project documents, the risks, the issues, and any other key artifacts that we want to track with regard to this project. As I drill in, I can see at the top I've got a little project summary bar that rotates and shows me late and upcoming tasks. Then it rotates back to the timeline bar. Below that, I can see any issues related to this project, any documents. And you can organize these risks, issues, and documents any way that makes sense for your organization. These are out-of-the-box configurations. So if I were to drill in and look at this software bug that's in the issue, I can see in detail who it's been assigned to and who's responsible for accomplishing or solving this particular issue. So the owner's Ben, it's been assigned to Steve to solve. We need this by October 18th. If there's a discussion, we would have a deeper discussion. Once it's resolved, how do we get it resolved for best practices? And are there any related issues? Let's go back to our home page. And we can see additional information about this particular project. So now I'm looking at a task view. Again, I've got my timeline view up above, and I can see all the individual tasks and who they're assigned to directly in the SharePoint site. In the calendar view, if you want to track any calendar related information, you can track calendar related information in the project site. You can also use OneNote. Every project site has a multi-user OneNote notebook. So now let's talk about the portfolio selection process. There's three main steps. We have our driver library, where we're going to establish what the strategies are for the corporation, driver prioritization, and finally portfolio analysis. Let's start with the driver library. In the driver library, this is where we define what are the key strategies that we want to align our projects to within the organization. In our example, we can see that we've got improving patient safety and quality care, improving regulatory compliance, so on and so forth. So the first thing is to determine what 5 to 7 drivers do you want to align your projects to. Once you've defined the drivers, you need to define what alignment to that driver means. So we're going to drill into this driver. We're going to look at some additional details regarding this driver and understand what alignment means. So I've got the name, a description. I can have department-specific drivers if necessary. And down below, I'm going to define what the impact statements are. What does no alignment mean to an extreme alignment? So later on, when the project managers are aligning their projects to the drivers, they'll have a clear definition of what each one of the drivers within the library actually means. Now that we've established our driver library, let's walk through driver prioritization. Driver prioritization is an exercise called pairwise comparison, which allows the executives to compare one driver against another and determine a mathematical formula for the importance of each driver. Let's look at our executive consensus, for example. As we drill in, we can see what the final result was, then we'll walk back through the exercise. The final result of the exercise was that this is our most important driver down to our least important driver. Well, how did we actually come up with that? Well, driver prioritization walks the team through an exercise where we compare the drivers against one another through a wizard. So as we do this, we're going to see the first driver is improving patient safety and care quality. And we're going to decide as a group or an individual, how does this align to improving the regulatory compliance driver? So in this case, the consensus was this is much more important than regulatory compliance. It's extremely more important than improving service time advantage. So you walk through this prioritization exercise, and a mathematical formula will then calculate what's our most important driver to our least important driver. That way, later on, when the project managers are aligning the drivers to the project, it's going to be easier to come up with a mathematical score of what our most important projects are. Now let's perform our portfolio optimization. We're going to go to Portfolio Analysis. We're going to create a new analysis. We're going to do our FY18 planning. So when I select New, it's going to open up a new optimization for me, and I'm going to type in FY18 budget, and you could do it by department if you wanted to, but we're going to do it for all the projects that are being proposed. We're going to use the clinical executive consensus. We're going to select the projects that we want to optimize, and in this case we're going to optimize all the proposed projects and in-work projects. So we're going to just grab them all. I'm going to remove just this one. I'm going to say OK. And what do we want to optimize for? Well, we're going to make our primary pivot total cost for this example. Now we're going to go next. And now what we're going to see is a heat map of all of the projects as they align to the strategies. And the idea of this heat map is for you to have a visual where I can see exactly what the optimization might deliver to us. So going down the left-hand side, we've got a list of all the projects. Going across the top, we've got each one of our strategies. And what we have on each project is the alignment as per the project manager to the strategy. Now, as the portfolio manager, if I wanted to, I could override it and say, for example, this HIPAA data compliance, right here where it says no rating, I'm going to say, you know what, that actually has a moderate rating to for that project and that driver. So we know how important each driver is to one another. We did that in pairwise comparison. Now we're going to be able to calculate a score for each project as they relate to the drivers. So when I say next, it's going to come up with a list of all of our projects organized from our most important project to our least important project. And we can see that the inpatient system upgrade is the most important, down to our least important, down to the resource scheduling upgrade. Now let's see, do we have enough money to go execute all these projects? When I analyze cost, the project managers that proposed the project put in a forecasted budget for each project. And to execute this entire portfolio, we would need a little over $18 million. But let's say, for example, we don't have $18 million, that we've only got $16 million. So I'm going to type in $16 million and recalculate. And what the system is going to do is it's not just going to draw a line in the sand and move the lowest priority projects out. It's going to see which basket of projects gives us the most alignment to our strategies for the money that's available. What we can see here is that 16 million, we're only going to spend 10 million to get 95% of the value. And these are the projects that got proved out. It moved out this neurology clinic, which is a very expensive project. So let's go ahead and we're going to save this optimization. So let's do a save. And I'm going to save this as the $16 million budget without the clinic. Because we're going to do one with the clinic forced back in and see what the consequences of that decision are. Because we know that everybody wants the clinic, so I'm going to come back in. I'm going to force that clinic back in. And when I force the clinic back in and say recalculate, I get to see the consequences of that decision. So what we're going to be able to see is that by pushing or forcing in the clinic, we're spending our full 16 million. We're getting 95% of the value. When I scroll down, these are the projects that got moved out. We can't afford to execute these projects. So let's save this real quickly. And let's say this is the $16 million budget with the clinic. We probably ought to see what happens if we only get a $15 million budget as well. So let's go down and type in 15 million and see what we're going to lose. We're probably going to lose another project or two, I would imagine. And so we've still got this clinic forced in, but when we move our budget down to the 15 million, we lost one more project. So let's go ahead and let's save this as our $15 million budget. And then now what I want to do is I want to look at these projects that have been forced out, and let's see, are any of these regulatory requirements or just other projects that we have to do? So let's say that this electronic patient record migration, well, that's something we know we have to do. So we're going to force that one back in. And this cardiac equipment upgrade, we know that that's the CEO's pet project, so we're going to force that one back in. So let's now recalculate and see what the consequences of those decisions are. So now we're getting an optimized portfolio based on a number of forced in projects. And now when we see what the consequences are, we can see we've lost all these other projects. So now let's go ahead and save this. Next, I'm going to type something really brief here. $15 million budget with forced in projects. Because what we want to do is we want to compare these different portfolios to one another. That's what this compare button is going to do for us. When we go to compare these projects, we can compare all these different portfolio analyses all on one sheet. So as the portfolio manager, I can do my what if scenarios, and I can go present this to the executive steering committee. So I can see based on which one of my portfolios I have, how many projects have been selected, what's the strategic value of each portfolio and the cost, and down below, I can see the details of what's been forced in, forced out, not selected. So this gives you a real good view to perform that analysis. The last piece I want to highlight is this strategic alignment. This is going to show us, are we even proposing the right projects? So we know by doing our pairwise comparison that this is our most important driver. And the high blue bar shows us the most important driver. It's the longest bar here. And what we can see is this is the amount of money we're planning to invest from this portfolio against that driver. So in this case, I would say we may even want to go back to the business and say, we need to propose projects that align to our drivers so that we've got a better, a more strategic balance of projects that we're going to propose to work on going into the following year. Now I'm going to take on the role as a resource manager. As a resource manager, I'm going to navigate to the resource center. And when I get to the resource center, it's going to show me a list of all the resources in the enterprise that I should have access to. And what we can see is I've got these organized by role. Each resource can have a role. If we look at the system support analysts, we've got 3 of those people and a generic that can be assigned to tasks. If we think about rolling wave planning, we might assign the generic role for things out in the future. As we get closer, we'll look to replace that with a named resource. I already have my resources selected below, so I'm going to go look at capacity planning. And as a resource manager, I want to be able to ask the question, can I take on additional work? As I look at this, I'm looking at this by FTEs. I've got 8 people working for me. I can see that we're going to be pretty tight in November, and it looks like we're going to be over allocated in December. Now, I can go ahead and start to play some what if exercises at this point as well. So if I want to first uncheck the proposed work box, now I can see what all of my committed work looks like. We're under committed. If we bring the proposed work back in, we're a little over allocated at this point in time. So if I want, I can deselect a project or two and see if that's going to solve my problem. Do I want to shift those projects out? But let's go ahead and let's flip this to look at it by people instead of by project. Again, I've got currently looking at this in FTEs. If I want, I can change to look at it in hours or days. Let's look at it in hours, because each month has a different number of hours available. We know that we're going to take some time off for Christmas, vacation, so on and so forth. So this is going to show me my true allocation perspective. What I want to do is scroll down and let's look at Cynthia down below so we can get down to some details from one of my resources. What we can see is that Cynthia is over allocated. Her availability is negative against her capacity. We can see that her project assignments, she's got 2 projects that she's pretty much allocated to during those heavy months. So maybe what we want to do is see, do I have a resource with the same skills as Cynthia that could take on that medical migration project? So I'm going to navigate to Microsoft Project on the desktop. And now I've already got that project open. What I want to do is see, is there anybody with that skill that can do that work? So I'm going to add resources by going to select build team. I want to show resource availability from that particular time frame. It's going to know the beginning and ending of the project. I want to check these boxes. And what I want to do is I want to select Cynthia and say match. And when I do this, it's going to find everybody that's got Cynthia's skills. And I can see that there's 2 people that share her role. I've got John and Irving, and it looks like only John has enough hours to take on this particular amount of work within this project. So when I say replace, what you're going to see is that every place that was Cynthia is now John, and John's assigned to those tasks. The final step is to let Cynthia and John know that these changes have occurred. So as the project manager or the resource manager with the right permissions, I'm going to publish this project, and this will update all the assignments that have been assigned to each one of them, and they'll each get email notification of the changes that have occurred. Now let's move into reporting. Microsoft utilizes both Excel services and Power BI for its reporting. Once you've installed the free Power BI content pack that's shipped by the project product group, you have the ability to drill in and get key information about what's going on with your projects. So I'm going to navigate to Power BI, and it's going to bring up critical information about my portfolio of projects. So I can see I've got a list of all my projects. I can see the large projects here. I can see overdue and upcoming milestones, projects that haven't been updated in the last month or have incompleted work in the past. But let's say I want to drill into a specific project and get more information. As I drill in, I'm going to be able to see the burn down curve for that specific project. So I can see what that looks like for that specific project. Again, I've got all the projects listed across the bottom and I can see upcoming milestones. Maybe I want to understand what's going on with my portfolio of issues across all of my projects. What's going on with my risks across all of my projects. What's going on with project compliance. We've got key indicators in this dashboard that show you things that are important to you. But more important than the out of the box is the ability to just query my data for information. So I'm going to go use natural language query as an element of Power BI. I'm just going to ask questions. Questions like, how much work is there in the environment? When I type work, it's going to come back and tell me there's 191,000 hours of work. Well, that's not of much use. So can you show me that by project? And as I type, it's going to interpret the words that I'm typing in and it's going to produce what it thinks is the most appropriate report to provide the information that I'm looking for. Now, if I don't like that view, I can come to visualization and I can change it and say, well, instead of a bar graph, I'd rather see it in a histogram. It's going to put that in a histogram. If I'd like, I could pin that visual and share it with other people. But maybe I want to ask more complex questions like, instead of just work, show me actual work and let's compare it, let's say, versus baseline work by project. And so what it's going to do is it's going to interpret my request using the Bing AI engine, and it's going to produce this graphic dynamically, and it knows that it requires dual access to produce that report. As I hover over the bubbles, it's going to show me the information underneath. But you might say, I don't like scatter graphs, I just want to see it in a table. Again, at any point in time, you can change the view to a view you like. I can pin that and it becomes part of my world. Now you can also create more advanced reports with the Power BI desktop tool. If I navigate to this next tab, here I can see a list of all the projects in my portfolio. I'm going to reset this back. And what I can see is I've got a list of all the projects that are over budget, all the projects that are under budget. What this is showing me is this is the amount of money I should have spent by today. Here's the amount of money I have spent. And as a portfolio manager, I may need to move money from one group of projects to another. So I might start by, let's say, what's going with my operations projects? Well, within operations, I got this one project that's massively overrunning. Got these three that are underrunning by where they should be spent today. I might take this opportunity to move some of that budget up to those other projects. Using the Power BI desktop, we can create additional kinds of reports as well. What this is showing me is my project SPI and CPI on a color grid. So here's all the projects and how they're performing. So I can see SPI, CPI, percent complete, all the key variables. And maybe I want to narrow it down to a geography within my organization, like what's happened within the central region, what's happening over in the south. Bring back the entire thing for me. And all the key metrics update throughout the process. The main thing I want to leave you with is that Power BI combined with Project Online can produce virtually any kind of a graphic that you're going to need to impart key information to decision makers so that they can have that single source of the truth that they're using to manage the entire portfolio from. I've got some exciting news about a new feature that's just being released in Project Pro Online. It's the ability to do not only waterfall planning, but agile planning directly in Project Pro. What does it mean? It means that we can plan agile projects, critical path projects, or combined projects all in the same location, all using the same resource pool. It gives us a lot of increased capability to track and manage everything that we want to track and manage in the environment. What are the three scenarios that we're really shooting for with this first release? We want to not only let the people manage or the PMs manage their regular waterfall projects, but a PM can manage an agile project using either Scrum or Kanban. A PM can manage tasks in a hybrid project using Scrum or Kanban. And a PM can report on task status using custom board status fields that they create that meet their specific needs. What does it look like? Well, directly inside of Project Pro, instead of seeing the Gantt chart, now I can see my sprints laid out on a regular task board like I should see. So I can see my 4 sprints planned out. I can drag and drop cards across the sprints as needed makes it very easy to do my planning. As I drill into an individual sprint, I can see what's coming up next, what's in progress, what's done. I can add new columns so that I can characterize my work any way I want to inside the environment. And I also have out of the box reports. So as a Scrum manager, I can see how many hours are in my backlog, what does my distribution of hours look like across my resources, what does my burn down chart look like, and you can tailor this to meet your own needs. So the exciting part here is both waterfall and agile all inside of Project Pro, and it'll be released shortly. Thank you.